not this year, and we're thankful for that. Our hearts reach out to you and your constituents as they go about rebuilding, and I think you were saying even today there may be another flood. Paul Tonko, representative from the state of New York, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Representative Garamendi, for bringing us together on what is a very thoughtful discussion about how we create jobs, grow jobs in America. And that is such a vital agenda. I thank you for bringing us together, and I thank you and our colleagues in the caucus for allowing myself and others to share the woes that we have faced in our respective districts over the recent district work period. It's ironic that in my district, in upstate New York, within days we suffered from an earthquake, from a hurricane, from a tornado in my hometown, and now flooding as we speak. The ravages of the waters of Irene have produced tremendous consequences for the great communities and the people that I represent. And as I've said at all of my stops in the district, I always believed that there was a strength to the people that I represent, but they have made a profound statement about that resilience and that strength in the last few days. I have seen people lose everything they've ever worked for, homes totally washed into the river, devastation from the floodwaters, cattle that were lost, harvest season almost at hand, all the investment of sweat equity and resources and fuel that never will really have the fruits of that labor captured in harvest. These heritage infrastructure, as I made mention in my hometown, the oldest building dates back to 1766, older than our nation, a wedding gift from Sir William Johnson to his daughter, and watching the velocity of the waters tear away the stone of that building and now expose it to the elements, and it was severely threatened and weakened by the storm. I mention this because it is so important for us to put together the resources that enable us to come back with the skilled labor that can rebuild communities, the heritage infrastructure that very much trailed through the waterway path in my district, covered bridges, historic homes, historic churches, gathering places that have significance, that speak to the character of the communities that I represent. That character is forever changed, and we need to have the resources to go forward and rebuild the infrastructure, the lock system that manages the waters, the gauging system, the technology that needs to be incorporated. Representative Garamendi, my district hosts the site of the Erie Canal Barge Canal that gave birth to mill towns, a necklace of communities we call mill towns that became the epicenters of invention and innovation. The progress of which we speak, the agenda that you bring forward with such passion is about now a new era of job creation where we move it up a notch because of our sophisticated quality as a society. We have perhaps shared manufacturing of traditional types with other nations, and now it's our job to bring in issues like the chip manufacturing that's done and all sorts of innovative ideas in clean energy that allow for renewables to take hold. But I make mention of that because we have a richness of history that spoke to job creation, that offered the opportunity to have our constituents or constituents of the past express their God-given talents and express them in ways that strengthened the larger picture, that strengthened society and had an impact around the world, coming right here from New York State that gave birth to a westward movement that finally reached the west coast of California that you represent. So we can do it again. We should take to heart our history that showed that as a people we have that pioneer spirit. As Americans, we have that uniqueness, we have that gift, we have those strengths, we have the opportunity to turn these situations, these challenges, into jobs. Jobs that are driven by ideas, that are nurtured by research and development, that translate into manufacturing. Manufacturing of an innovation economy of the present moment. And we can make that happen. simply by the stewardship of sound public policy and advocacy for resources in our budget planning. I firmly believe, and I know you share this belief, we don't cut our way to prosperity, we don't cut our way to opportunity, we invest our way to prosperity. We invest our way to innovation, to opportunity. That's what it's all about. And the Make It in America agenda, embraced by the Democratic caucus in which we have the pleasure of serving, has adopted that slogan, has adopted the meaning of that passionate opportunity for us to take the trades, take tax policy, take the energy challenges, take the strength of labor, reinforced by the underpinnings of education and higher education, and coupled with research. It all happens if we put the plan together. And thank you for opening us up to a discussion that is very meaningful to the lives of our community, of our individual constituents, and to the fabric of our communities, which are really looking for this sort of involvement, this sort of implementation of strategy.
Representative Taco, you so well explained with great passion the problems that your constituents are facing at this very moment as, once again, the floodwaters rise in your district and throughout the Northeast. Actually, I guess it's most of the East Coast, as that tropical storm starting in on the Gulf is now finding its way all the way up the East Coast. Our prayers go out to all the people that have suffered thus far, and our hopes that this will not be a repetition of the devastating floods of last week. You also brought to our attention the need to rebuild. And this is part of the community of America. We're a community. We're 380 million, but we're still a community. We call ourselves Americans. And in these times of disaster, we must come together as a community, bringing what resources are necessary, not what's available, that are necessary to rebuild, to get people back on the path of living their lives in a safe, harmonious community with the necessary resources to carry out their goals so they can have a job, so they can rebuild their manufacturing facilities. That fits into the Make It in America agenda. As we go about that rebuilding, as the roads, and we've all seen the pictures of the washed out roads, you mentioned and you showed me the picture of the lock. Was that an Erie Canal lock?
Yeah, it was the second stage of the canal when we moved from the mule-driven barge canal to the Erie Canal, which was engineered with locks. And again, to see the damage, tens of millions of dollars worth of damage. You know, infrastructure here, putting the trades to work to rebuild these communities. You know, you made an interesting observation that there, you know, the impacts of natural disasters and man-made disaster never ask about political persuasion or philosophy or geography. We've been impacted from coast to coast. And with pride the other day, we in upstate New York were talking, some colleagues in government were talking about, you know, when the Midwest needed us, we were there. When the West Coast needed us, we were there. As you have been for other regions in the country. Southeast needed us, the Gulf states needed us. We're there. We're the family of America, the 50 states speaking as one. Now it's the turn for us to ask your help. And, you know, thanks to the goodness of folks like yourself, we're going to make it happen. We're going to be able to rebuild. And I think the greatest commodity that we can bring to individuals at times like this, where they're enduring, they're coping with tragedy, is to deliver hope to their doorstep. And that hope goes a long way. And the hope to recover, the hope to rebuild, the hope to reestablish the character of these communities, which is so replete with history and heritage expression, covered bridges, historic homes, historic churches, you know, lock systems that define not only development of New York State, but this nation and the global impact it had, with quality of life being enhanced simply by the genius of oftentimes blue-collar workers. So Make It in America came to mind for me over this past week. The greatness of how we developed jobs and products in this country now finds us a century later challenged with new dynamics. How do we draw ourselves away? How do we wean down this dependency on fossil-based fuels? How can we grow America's energy independence? How do we grow high-tech jobs that impact the quality of healthcare services or communications? We've seen it. You know, our whole Sputnik moment drove us to land a person on the moon before any other nation. We need that passion again. We need that resolve here today, and Make It in America does it.
You're talking about real patriotism.
Absolutely.
You're talking about real American patriotism, the great strength of this nation. First of all, our compassion for each other, that we're willing to sacrifice today so that you can rebuild in the Northeast. The Northeast has done that, or all of America has done that many, many times for California because it seems to have more than its share of disasters. But across this nation this year, we've seen natural disaster after natural disaster occur with billions of dollars of loss. As Americans, it is our patriotic duty. It is our community to reach out to help rebuild. As we rebuild, if we keep in mind these 7 principles of the Make It in America agenda, we'll not only put people back on their feet, but we will strengthen the American economy. You mentioned that lock that was taken out, the historic nature of it. It's been rebuilt. I saw the picture. It's a modern piece of equipment. But if that equipment is made in America, it's not only going to help the economy in your community once it gets back into place and the commerce that results from it is restarted, but it will also mean jobs for steel workers who are making the steel, the fabricators who are building the lock, the engineers, and even the regulators that are making sure the lock goes in a safe and appropriate way. Those are all American jobs. So part of the rebuilding of America is the make it in America.
Right. And
so that Americans can make it once again.
And I think what this tragedy reminds us of is that we come together at times of tragedy in a way that really brings out the best expression of America's spirit. You know, this is about a sense of urgency. It's about a sense of justice. People have been brought down by this tragedy, but their resilience, their strength of character is driven by the belief that we can work together to rebuild. And I was so inspired today in caucus to hear so much support for a supplemental and to say no idea of offsets. We're not going to have offsets here. This is tragedy. If this nation were being attacked by a foreign enemy, we wouldn't sit around and play partisan games or have political dialogue over what to do, but we'd go right to the table and say, this is what is needed, let's make it happen. And that's what I think we need to have here. We need the American response to come forward and react in a way that really has that American spirit all about it. And this is how we built America, one community at a time, putting together the strengths that are all released here in this country and able to be expressed in magnanimous terms. And this is what's so important. We're going to rebuild America by making it in America. Our workers are raring to go, and there are jobs that can invest the power of that genius in all sorts of ways. Infrastructure needs that are out there in the traditional sense or in the more creative or updated sense with broadband and a transmission grid system that needs to be upgraded so as to speak to what is a vulnerability in our system. So there's a lot of work there waiting to happen. We need to invest, and we need to do it in a way that doesn't have us groping for offsets. There's no more important issue right now than jobs. Jobs, jobs, job creation, job retention. Let's make it happen. And as we do it, let's make it respond to the tragedies that I see in my district over the last week and a half and that we heard about today in caucus from other colleagues.
Let me just give you, thank you very much, and you're quite correct about how we pay for all of this. We know that we're going to be borrowing money to rebuild these communities, as we should and as we must, and as it is our purpose in a community. But in doing that, we must be very careful not to offset that expenditure in some way that harms others, for example, the educational system. Now, tomorrow, we have a bill on the floor dealing with charter schools and the funding of charter schools, both the physical plant as well as the educational programs in charter schools. It seems to me that if a charter school is to be built, or any school for that matter, it's our tax money, either local or federal or state tax money, that money ought to be used to buy American-made equipment. American-made roofing, American-made concrete and steel, so that our tax money is used to buy American-made. And if you want to use your own money, and anybody out there that wants to go buy a solar cell for their house, and they're using their own money, fine, buy anything you want to buy. But if you want to use our tax money as a subsidy for that solar system, then by golly, it ought to be an American-made solar panel. Not one made in China, but rather one made in the United States. Now, I have two bills that deal specifically with that. One in the energy that says, hey, you want an energy subsidy to put up this big energy, clean, green solar power plant? Good, we need that clean energy. But use that tax subsidy to buy American-made equipment. That way we can rebuild our American manufacturing base. Similarly with transportation. In transportation, we all pay 18.5 cents on every gallon of gas on the federal excise tax. It's billions of dollars. It's used to build the roads. It's used to repair the bridges. Not enough now to keep us going, but nonetheless, billions of dollars a year. Well, is that tax money used to buy American-made buses and American-made trains and American-made steel and concrete? Not really. But we need legislation that says our tax money is going to be used to buy American-made equipment. Mr. Tonko?
Yeah, Representative Garamendi, thank you again for bringing us together. But I noticed in the listing of dynamics that you have research indicated there and education and I'd say / higher education. But I witnessed testimony of those investments yesterday in my district with a group called Energy Rotors. And they're actually taking the waste heat market in this country and retrofitting it so that they capture that as a byproduct in the industry, in different industries, and they make certain that it's utilized to add to the energy supplies that that industry might need. Now, what happens there? Well, the genesis of that story is that ideas, again, were thought up, the investment of education and higher education, this brain was ignited to come forward with this idea that would capture heat, and that heat market, waste heat market, is a precious commodity now. So instead of it just going up into waste, it is captured, recaptured, brought into the energy grid for that particular industry. We're addressing greenhouse gas emissions to the positive. We're reducing those, and we're reducing the energy supply that this industry needs, and we're creating jobs in this incubator startup that came up with this idea. This took investment in research dollars. It took tax credits from the federal government to buy in the commitment from the private sector. It produced the equity that they needed simply with the tax credits that were provided, and all lived happily ever after. There's a win-win-win scenario here that was produced, and that's grounded here in America, and we can export this intellect, this concept, to people around the world, and we begin to be the agents that deal with the waste heat market. What a wonderful concept, and that's how you grow jobs. And they're projecting within a few years 120 jobs in this concept. This is wonderful. This is what we're talking about as a Democratic caucus, investing into the intellectual capacity of this nation in a way that responds to challenges that confront us this very day, and where we can grow our energy independence, grow jobs through investing in ideas, moving ideas along. Research equals jobs. Research equals jobs. You can't say it over enough and often enough.
Well, you're absolutely correct on that. I want to give just a couple of very quick examples of the way in which that policy finds its way into legislation. And then I want to turn to our colleague who just arrived from the great state of Texas.
Absolutely.
Sheila, thank you so very much. But let me just give a couple of examples. Tax policy. You're talking about a system to capture waste heat and to use it in a productive way, generating electricity or for some other purpose. That's a capital investment. When the Democrats controlled this floor, we passed legislation that allowed a business, such as you've described, to put that equipment into place and to write off the total investment in 1 year, in the very first year, an immediate write-off, giving an enormous incentive to businesses to make a capital investment. Now that's very wise tax policy put forth by the Democrats, signed by President Obama, and it's one of the kinds of tax policies and tax breaks that we think needs to be in place to grow the economy. There are many other examples, and I can go on for several hours, but I'd rather turn to my colleague from the great state of Texas. Please tell us what's going on in Texas besides fires here and there, and once again another disaster area in which, as America, we need to reach out and support Texas. So,
let me thank my good friend from California for carrying on, if you will, for carrying on the clarion cry that all of us heard throughout our districts and around the country. To my good friend from New York, let me just turn and say to you what deep concern the American people have. Do not listen to the jangled noises of cuts and not having the potential to assist our fellow Americans. We were all pained to see Prattsville and to see what had happened to unsuspecting people. That's Mother Nature. To see what happened to Vermont and all up and down the coast, as we have listened to our colleagues. And as I was driving in Texas, I want you to know that I saw the smoke. This is not something that is distant and far away. We've seen the pain of Congressman Doggett's district, and I want to thank him for his leadership there, as I've mentioned, that the leadership that members have given, that you go to a place where 500 homes are gone and more, and as he indicated, maybe even 1,000. So I happen to be proud to be an American. And when I listen to my friend from California with the list of assets and credentials that you bring to the table, your leadership in the state of California, the leadership of Mr. Tonker in New York, I know that we are all wearing that brand of proud to be an American. That's why Democrats proudly wear the insignia dealing with Make It in America. And frankly, I can't project on what the President might say, but I would hope that a good portion, and I want the American people to hear me, because when we traveled across the country with the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Minnesota, Oakland, Miami, Detroit, Cleveland, Los Angeles, Atlanta, thousands were in line from all walks of life. What they said was they wanted a job. And I want the President to hear that as he passionately speaks to the nation tomorrow. And I want the President to lift his pen. Make It in America could be part of an executive order. Make It in America could be part of instructions. And so as as I listen to you, I wanted to come and frame it in this way. The American people are looking for work now. And I'd like the President to listen to our dialogue as he finishes the finishing touches to show the American people what can be done now by an agreeable Congress, maybe, but by the President with the support of those of us who believe we owe an obligation to those who are suffering in this disaster to declare it an emergency, and that this funding is an emergency. I don't want to hear the chatter that talks about deficit spending. Everyone knows that when you declare an emergency, it is off the account, if you will. It's off the balance sheet. So that's one thing. The second thing is, let me just give 4 points of what I would like to see. You mentioned, Mr. Grimaldi, about buying. What a brilliant idea. I want to go further, or to complement that legislation. Let's get together. And that is, even though we think America buys America, if the federal government needs a paperclip, it should be the paperclip company in Illinois, in California, in New York, in Mississippi, in Texas. Because if the government buys something for you, you've got a business with 20 or 30 employees. Let the federal government lead. Let the President announce tomorrow that he is asking his agencies, barring any legalities with contracts, to buy America. You mentioned buses and all others, I assume, with federal funding. Excellent, because that is not happening now. The second thing is, the criticism is that there are workers not trained to the work. There's a new day now. It's technology, it's medicine, it's various new jobs, it's systems, logistics, etc. Allow someone to train to a new job and have a stipend while they're training. That allows them to be like they're working and to get paid. Then I would like to see our private sector stand up. I'm proud to be an American, born in the USA. step up and stand up. I want them to provide the President within a period of time a 6-month to 12-month plan. It's called the I'm an American plan of how their industry can hire the qualified unemployed. I come from energy territory. I know we've had a lot of discussion about that. But they exist and they hire. Somebody else might be coming from technology, somebody else is healthcare, somebody else is in industries that we're not even aware of. Of course, we've talked about the whole renewable energy, but there are a lot of industries that can be asked to come to the table. You need hires. I understand that you have not, but I need you to be an American, proud to be an American, the private sector. Finally, let me just say that one of the problems, I have a man in my area who is making solar flashlights. Not solar panels. He doesn't have to worry about the panel issue. What a brilliant idea. Can't get a bank to lend him money, and he wants to build his company in and around my area and hire people. He can't get a bank loan. Well, I want the President, within reason, to be Mr. D-Reg on the take the challenge of the banks and ask them, so what is the reg that keeps you from loaning to a credible, legitimate businessman who has a proven product? Let me just say this. He's making it in China. He wants to bring it home. So I want the President, through an executive order, to insist, put a criterion, that our banks have been given a gift. They need to turn that gift back as proud Americans and loan to small businesses. So I wanted to come today to answer the question of Americans who say, I need a job now. And even though there will be some legislative initiatives, and I want to applaud the President for his leadership in coming forward and putting it to us, but we know that the Democrats are ready to travel down the job road and to give the American people their jobs now. Mr. President, if you're going to run into obstacles, not the Democrats, then you stand up and use that executive power. And I know that the members on this floor, I'm going to speak for the California, New York, will stand alongside of you and behind you, that you will provide jobs for the American people. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity. And again, I want to offer, again, any help that we can give. I'm a member of the Homeland Security Committee. We've done this for Hurricane Ike and Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita. We are helping the tragedy in Joplin, Missouri. I went to Alabama to see what a tornado can do. There was damage with the earthquake that went on right before on the East Coast. I asked, what are we, then the federal government, to be the rainy day umbrella when you are in need? There is no excuse to block any funding for those that are in need, and we're going to be behind you, and we're going to create jobs. I yield to the gentleman.
Well, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, you are a true leader. Your state of Texas is under a fiery assault and will also need direct federal assistance, not only in fighting the fires, but also in the eventual recovery. And that's certainly going to be the case in New York.
Well, the gentleman yield just for one moment, and so glad that you, I mentioned Congressman Doggett, but what I wanted to say on this point that I think is important, in our state, it is documented that our governor has cut the volunteer firefighters. Those are great heroes. We even lost a firefighter just a few months when our wildfire started in the spring. Of course, it sort of, I won't even say the term died down, but it is now risen again and attacked a whole new area. So we're going to have to ask for federal aid, and we have just, as I understand the facts through Congressman Doggett, the governor has just indicated, Governor Perry, that the federal government has a role. He has just asked that Texas be declared a national disaster. My question to my fellow colleagues is, then what will be our response when people are literally, Prattsville was washed away, there are nothing but ashes. They can't even find a picture book. So are we going to tell them it's off budget, we're not able to fund it, it's deficit spending? I think not. I thank you for reminding the American people that Texas is facing its own mountain to climb, and those fires, by the way, have not yet been extinguished. They're visible to all of us.
We understand, and there are many different kinds of disasters. The natural disasters that we've discussed several minutes here on the floor. There's also the disaster of not having a job, of losing your home, not being able to care for your family, and seeing all of your dreams just basically disappear for lack of a job. As we reach out, as we think about these natural disasters and our human desire to be helpful, we need to also think about those millions of Americans, and we're probably talking well over 20, maybe 25 million Americans that do not have a job. And they are facing their own personal disaster. They need help. They need help from many different places, certainly their communities, wherever it may be, but also the federal government. And I know that those of us on the Democratic side of this aisle have, for the last 3 years, attempted and succeeded in developing programs that actually have created millions of jobs. A lot of people talk about the American Recovery Act not working. In fact, it did work. Some 3 million jobs were created. Those are not my estimates. Those are estimates by the Congressional Budget Office and others. You know, give or take 100,000. We're talking about thousands and tens of hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs that were actually created. We cannot go through an austerity period at this point because people are hurting. They need help, they need jobs, and we can do it and simultaneously build the American economy by the infrastructure, putting in place the foundation, by educating. Great example I ran into just yesterday. I talked earlier about this biotech company that's creating herbicides and biopesticides. They need to hire technicians in their laboratories and in the manufacturing. They can't find them. The education bills that we put forth that have been stopped and actually reduced by our Republican colleagues are necessary for the community colleges and other educational institutions to provide the skills needed for those people that have lost their jobs to become technicians, high-paid technicians in that new biotechnology field. So there's where these things come together. We need to always keep in mind the millions of personal disasters that are out there as people have lost their jobs and struggled. Representative Tonko, I know you're facing natural disasters, but just when we were here in August, early August and July, you were talking about these job and the need for jobs in your area. So please come back and let's pick this up again and carry it.
I want to pick up on that importance of education as a role for our comeback. But before I do that, I want to thank two very good friends and two very sensitive hearts for the empathy that you have expressed on behalf of the people of my district and neighboring districts in the Northeast. So Representative Garamendi from California and Representative Jackson Lee from Texas, thank you for bringing out the neighborliness in all of us. That is our best expression as an American people, and we do it through the auspices of our federal government. When one amongst us hurts, we respond in a way that enables us to come back and strengthen the fabric of our entire nation. But to the point of education, recently the district I represent, the region that I represent, was dubbed the fastest growing hub in America for green-collar jobs and the third fastest growing hub for high-tech jobs by two independent surveys. And the reason that happened was because we invested through federal government, state government, and private sector and academia in an agenda that speaks to cutting-edge technology. And it happened because there are three basic formats of infrastructure that need to be reinforced and responded to, that being your physical infrastructure, your fiscal infrastructure, your capital infrastructure, and human infrastructure. And Representative Garamendi and Representative Jackson Lee, you both referenced the education issues. They're very important to the comeback of this nation, to growing jobs and retaining jobs. What I witness through the efforts in our region, we have a clustering happening. As you have this strength, we have the largest chip manufacturing plant construction going on right now in all of America in the region that we call Capital Region, New York. And I know that as other industries come in, other businesses come in, there's a demand for workers. Now, it's great to grow jobs. That's our first step in the process. But we have to make certain that jobs are responded to with the skill sets required. And those skill sets need to be brought to and enhanced for all neighborhoods, all communities. It has to be the coalition of mosaic of workers brought to the table. And how do we do it? It's an investment in education beginning as early as pre-K and right through the college setting. Now, I witness what happens at our community colleges. We have grown programs for clean room science. We have those investing in solar application to construction majors, those who are going to be building residents and businesses in our region. They're going to have state-of-the-art know-how to retrofit those buildings with renewable concepts, from solar to wind to geothermal, whatever. So that cutting edge is being offered. We have an incubator in the region, several incubators, but we have one that incorporates a business that has produced automation in their manufacturing at Kintz Plastics in Schoharie County, New York, which, by the way, absorbed some of the greatest blows from Mother Nature this past week. But right there in rural Schoharie County, New York, just absolutely replete with heritage and history. In that county, in a rural county, they're providing for automation and advanced manufacturing. And that took place because we invested in a CAT concept, an incubator, a Center for Advanced Technology. And there we're getting ideas again that are then put into prototypes that are then further developed into a manufacturing concept that enables us to be competitive with this automation. But then you need now the skill set to operate these automated networks that are now part of the assembly process. So it's that investment again in the worker, in the brain power. This country will be competitive if we put the tools together, if we provide the toolkit. And how does it happen? It happens by doing it smarter. And that enables us to cut costs and be competitive in the global market. It's as simple as that, and Make It in America is a pronouncement of a commitment by the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives that says, let's do the tax packaging, let's do the resource advocacy, let's do the research development incentives that bring together the strongest force of manufacturing. Manufacturing as a sector was ignored in the last decade and a half. And now this president has said we're going to be about an innovation economy. We're going to be about a clean energy agenda. We're going to be about bolstering our manufacturing sector. And I know there's growing expectation. We're going to hear about Make It in America. We're going to hear about an infrastructure bank. I'm convinced that's what we'll hear tomorrow, and that will produce for us a far stronger outcome for America's workers and America's potential.
Representative Tonko, as you were talking, I reached back and I found this display that I sometimes use. We've used it before. These are critical investments. Yes, infrastructure, the dams, the roads, those are critical investments. But here's the most critical investment of all. These are American workers being educated, getting prepared for the new technology jobs, carrying on the jobs of the future. This is where we need to make a critical investment in America, and this is a key part of the Make It in America agenda. That's the education, labor and education, making sure our labor force is well educated and well prepared for the jobs of the future. Sheila Jackson-Lee, you were looking like you wanted to get in the middle of this, so let's go.
If you would, I'd love to just have that in front of me as I was looking, and I thank the gentleman for being so prepared with such important statements. And of course this statement, a better deal for America, invest in America, make it in America. I want to acknowledge the whip of our caucus, Mr. Hoyer, who's been persistent. We've joined him like a choir because it is important. But let me make this economic point. I wanted to hold this up. When we had the helm in the 1990s, since I'm talking patriotic and say I'm proud to be an American, we understood one economic factor, and of course even politically, I think some of us suffered. But under the Clinton administration, if I might say, it was an investment and revenue, and we turned the economy around. And we weren't down in the soup. We knew we had to tighten our belt. We even did a budget reform in 1997, if I can bring back ancient history. But 20 million jobs were created. I don't want to hear, I know there are a lot of pundits and economists that want to say that we're on our last leg. Don't tell that to the American people. We're not on our last leg. Your area is going to be resilient because we're going to help you. You might have thought, as we come to this very somber weekend, that Manhattan and New York were on its last leg in 2001. That might have been our assumption, our conclusion when we were so overwhelmed with grief. Look at them now. Why? Because we put public, federal government, and private partnership together, and they are restored in terms of their infrastructure. This is what we're talking about. Another economic point that I want to just make very quickly. I have no angst against China and India, but I am disappointed that, again, a number of economic talking heads want to compare economies. Understand what is happening. What they are saying is that the growth in those areas is surpassing us. Do you understand that we've been growing now for almost 2 centuries? We started the Industrial Revolution in the 1900s. No one could catch us. We're now, I'm not going to say coasting, but we have our economic challenges because that is almost what economics is about. But growth that they're talking about is the fact that there's something to grow. They didn't have anything. And so if they are growing, they're growing because they're developing this new, if you will, level of income in their citizens, a middle class, but at the same time, they have this huge economic pit hole, which is the numbers of poor and impoverished. No one comments on that. What I am suggesting is that America is still the greatest economy in the world. We have challenges, but I am tired of hearing deficit, deficit, we have to cut spending, because it means we have no vision. And if you really want to understand what we need to do is do this. We need to build the inventors who are out there. When I say build them, and build them up. The President's going to talk about patent bill, and we need to do what you have just eloquently dictated. But I just want everybody to know that America is not broke, nor are we broke of ideas. And I believe with Make It in America, with investing in America, with building revenue and deficit reduction, we are the nation that many will still look to for its greatness. And I thank the gentleman for his leadership on this particular special order. And I just say this: jobs, jobs, jobs.
It is jobs, 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 Ms. Lee. Thank you so very much. This is America. This is America, the strongest country in the world today. There are others that are growing, and thankfully they are. But this is America. We talk about patriotism. Some people say we're broke. We're not broke. We've got troubles, to be sure. But we have an extraordinary strength in America, and it's the American worker. And they need a chance. They need a governmental system that is supporting them with education, with programs such as infrastructure, with using our tax money to buy the products that they make. This is America. We're Americans. We're the people that get things done. Nobody has been at it longer than upstate New York. The Industrial Revolution started in your territory, Mr. Tonko. And I see the strength that you have, and I see the strength that your people have to rebuild after this devastating week.
Right. Their strength, their resilience is infectious, and they motivate me. They fill my voice with passion. Again, I thank you for the wonderful support you've expressed today in caucus to do a standalone supplemental bill for the people of this recent tragedy. My district was in the midst of that, but many other districts, 40-some, 47, I believe, districts were impacted by it. But Representative Garamendi, I couldn't help but think, as Representative Jackson Lee spoke just of late with such eloquence, that America's most shining moments are when we invested in America, invested in a canal system, invested in an infrastructure program with rail.
Ms. Lee loves that, invest in America.
Invested in a rail system, invested in an interstate system, invested in a race to the moon that unleashed untold amounts of technology. That investment had a bipartisan spirit to it. Under Republican and Democratic administrations, we were at our shining best when we invested in America. And so what do we hear now? Let the free market rule. Well, go tell it to companies whose countries are co-investing with them. We hear it all the time. They're co-investing in these other countries. In fact, the private sector investment in renewables used to be placing America #1. We slipped to #2, to China, and recently slipped to #3 after China and Germany. The America I love, the America we all love, is not about being number 3. We're about being number 1. And that's the investment we're talking about.
Let me just interrupt you for a second, because you mentioned something that just caught me like that. Public policy, public laws make a difference. I want to give you an example. You mentioned Germany and the advances that they've made in green technology. I had the opportunity over the recess to go to a manufacturing plant owned by Siemens, a German company, one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the world, in Sacramento, California. And they are manufacturing in Sacramento, starting with just pieces of steel, and building light rail cars and heavy-duty locomotives for Amtrak. I mean, this is the heaviest manufacturing that occurs in any country. It's a German company located in Sacramento, manufacturing from start to finish for American transportation systems. Why are they doing that? Why is that German company investing millions upon millions of dollars in California to manufacture trains and locomotives? They're doing it because the American Recovery Act, the stimulus bill, said that the money must be used on American-made equipment. The laws we make on this floor, the work done here in this Capitol, will determine the future of Americans' manufacturing. If we ignore the necessity of putting in place laws that say, make it in America, use American taxpayer dollars to buy American-made equipment, if we ignore that, then we'll see those jobs go offshore and we'll see that equipment come onshore. That's not what I want. That's not what the Make It in America agenda is all about. It's about a set of policies, trade policies. Free trade? No. Fair trade? Yes. China, you're manipulating your currency. There's a bill that's being held up in committee by our Republican colleagues that would force China to deal with its currency manipulation. 25 to 30% advantage in cost simply through an unfair trade practice that China is foisting upon this nation and others. Taxes. We haven't talked about tax policy much, but there are tax policies that are critically important. Energy, we've touched on, and we'll come back to energy in the days ahead because this is about national security. Labor, education, research, infrastructure, we've touched on that today. We've got about 5 to 7 minutes. Let's do our lightning rounds here, and we'll go round and round. That Invest in America, I like that one. Sheila Jackson Lee, Texas. Tell us about it.
Well, let me, to my friend from California, because I know California has itself faced some of those travails when it had a natural disaster. Let me say to my friend from New York, you are absolutely right. We are committed for that supplemental to those in New England, to those along the East Coast, and to my fellow Texans. I know there's a time and a place for America to stand with you. I want to see the President with those of good faith. There's a little comment here, Congress, the autumn of its discontent. I want the gentleman from California to know that I have no discontent. I have excitement. I have enthusiasm. I just ask my friends on the other side of the aisle to join me and walk down the aisle and celebrate the idea that we are the Congress of action. Take the Democrats' ideas about job creation, about investment, about infrastructure, about educating our people, about research. Take my ideas about getting people trained to jobs, paying them while they're training, they have an income. Take the idea of buying a paper clip from a small company that's here in America, and take the idea, if you will, to ask our fellow Americans, corporations, I heard they were people, to stand up and give us their 6-month plan to put people to work. They've got openings. They've got openings. Let's ask them to join us as patriots and put Americans to work, however they want to frame it. But Americans will then be back to work, and then we are then healing that economy, because everybody says people working, people buy. That means they're buying furniture. That means they're buying paper clips. That means they're buying cars. That's what I'd like to see. And I will finally say this, Mr. President, if you've got a pen and you want to sign it into law, or into action, if you will, that's an executive order, we're standing with you and the American people. We want jobs.
Thank you, Sheila Jackson Lee. Mr. Tonko.
Sure, Representative Garamendi, I'll try to do this in lightning speed. But, you know, I think of two things here. People that were impacted by the storms in my district that need to rebuild are also impacted with the loss of jobs. Small businesses that have shut are losing jobs for the community. So it makes sense to bring back those jobs. The dignity of work is what should drive us, which should motivate us. And oftentimes in this equation, as has usually been the tradition, people of most modest means, neighborhoods, communities, people, businesses of modest means, farms of modest means have been impacted here. So we need to respond, and we need to respond with that dignity of work for the young college grad who has college loans to pay off and is told, come back when you have experience. For the middle-aged person who lost a job through no fault of her own, now needs to continue to work, and maybe at the age of 55 is having a tough time landing that work, or seniors who need to supplement their income. Across the age spectrum, we need to be there to provide the dignity of work. Again, let's give America its newest shining moment. Let's invest in jobs. Let's make it in America. Let's invest in manufacturing as a sector. We are still perched at the top of the list with manufacturing jobs. We lost too many because the manufacturing sector was ignored. Let's shine that moment again for America.
Tomorrow, thank you, Mr. Tonko, and Ms. Sheila Jackson Lee. Your representation of your constituents and of America is unparalleled. You are fighters. You are fighters for those people that have faced their personal disaster of losing their job, losing their home, and many of their dreams. Tomorrow, here on the floor of this Congress, the Senate and the House will meet, and we'll be listening to our President talk to us and to the American people at a moment in time that is of critical importance to the very future of this country, a moment in which we will choose a path, an aggressive path to deal with the disaster of unemployed Americans. He'll come to us with a plan. I believe it'll be a bold plan. It'll be comprehensive. It'll cover probably many of the issues that are here on our Make It in America agenda. But I want all of us, Democrat and Republican, to take those ideas and to put them into law so that Americans can have a job, so that once again they can become taxpayers, and in doing so bring to America's treasury the money that we need to deal with our deficit. It's a very, very important moment. We're going to need to reach across the aisle, right down this middle aisle, reach across it and say, okay, our colleagues here were talking earlier about regulation. There's some good that needs to come from that. There are regulations that impede progress. And on our side, we want to put people to work. With that, we await the President tomorrow, and we'll stand with him and with all Americans to put us back to work. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi.
This gentleman have a motion.
Standing ovation.
To adjourn. Gentleman yields back. This gentleman have a motion to adjourn. A motion to adjourn, yes, sir, please.
Mr. Speaker, I guess we've talked long enough, and it's time for adjournment. I move for adjournment.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for morning hour debate.
Today, House members approved a bill that extends duty-free product sales in the U.S.